So with this file, there are a number of issues that we want to address. One, we have to talk about these functions: the sum ifs, count ifs, average ifs, max ifs, and min ifs. And all these functions are used when you want to summarize data based on a criteria, or summarize data by a criteria. Here we have employee name, we got the department, we got the position, and the salary for that employee. Then with that kind of data, let me undo this so that you get to see the working. So I'm deleting this because this is exactly what we should be doing. So here we are told for every department, that is marketing, sales, procurement, and finance, find the values below. So the first value is, can you be able to get the total salary for every department? We got 4 departments here. We want to summarize total salary by department. How is that going to be possible? Yes, that is going to be possible if we use the sum if. So what we're going to do on cell H7, equal sign, then sum if. And you can be able to see the arguments when you're using the sum if. The first one is the range, then criteria, and the range sum. So what is the difference between the range and the range sum? The range sum has to be the numerical column. The range has to be the categorical column or the text column. So let's get started. So we want to get the total salary by department. So the first range is the department. So I say the easiest way, if you want to highlight a large amount of data, is Control Shift then arrow, comma. Then criteria, we want sales department, comma. And the next thing is the sum range, which is the salary column. And then I have my final parentheses. If you have to pull this formula down, or if you want to copy this formula down, there's one thing that you ought to do. You have to absolutely reference all the ranges. So I'm going to press F4 on the range and the sum range, so that I can pull this down. So you can see that we've been able to get the total salary per department. This was possible because of the use of sum if. One thing that you're noting with sum if is that if you want to aggregate data, if you want to summarize data using one criterion, you use sum if. The same can be done using Sumifs. But how do you do this with Sumifs? So let us write down here, equal sign, then Sumifs. So with Sumifs, it is almost the same arguments, but the arguments are not following each other like the sum if. One difference between Sumifs and sum if is that Sumifs, you can use Sumifs if you have more than one criteria, because if you look at this, you can see there's criteria range 1, criteria 1, criteria range 2, criteria 2. So if you have more than one criteria, you use Sumifs. If you have only one criteria, you can use sum if. What does that mean? It means even when with one criteria, the singular of plural is criteria. A singular should be criterion. So even with a criterion, you can use the Sumifs. That is exactly what it means. Okay, let us look at how to use this. These, the arguments are they are aligned differently compared to Sumif, because here we are starting with the sum range, and we said the sum range is the numerical column. All right, comma. Then we have criteria range 1. So what is going to be our criteria range 1? It is going to be the departments. The easiest way to highlight a large amount of data, Control Shift arrow. Next, we got criteria 1. So what is going to be this criteria 1? It is going to be the sales department. So we said if you have to pull this formula down, then you have to adjust, you have to absolutely reference all the sum ranges, the sum range and the criteria range, because we want to fix the cells there. The only thing that we want to be changing is this department. So we are pulling this down, and we can see we are getting the same fingers when you use SUMIF or Sumifs. Same fingers when you're using the SUMIF or Sumifs. This is average salary. How will you be able to get the average? How will you be able to get the average salary across each and every department? How? There's a function called Averageif. And Averageif, it is similar to the SUMIF. Same arguments, same position of the arguments. Where we start with the range, then the criteria, and the average range. So here we said the range is going to be the departments. Next, it is the criteria, and the criteria here is going to be sales. The next is going to be the average range, and the average range here we said is going to be the salary column because it should be a numerical column. We absolutely reference all the ranges, that is the range and the average range. And then we can pull this down. If we decide to add another column here, and we use the Averageifs, it is going to work the same way, just like Sumifs. This is how to use Averageifs. So Averageifs, you can use Averageifs if you have more than one criteria. Even when you have one criteria, you can still use Averageifs. And here you start with the average range. So the average range, which is the salary, comma, criteria range 1, which becomes our department, comma, and criteria 1, which is the sales department in this case. We are going to absolutely reference all the ranges. So that just press in between the cell reference, then press F4. You'll be able to absolutely reference this. Then okay. So you can see we're getting the same figures, whether you're using the Averageifs or Averageif. The most important thing that you should not forget is Averageif, Averageifs, all these functions with the if or if phase they are used to summarize data by criteria. If the criteria is 1, you can use the if function. If the criteria is more than 1, then you can use the ifs. The same can be done for the maximum salary. We want to get the maximum salary across all these departments. We want to know who is the most paid person in the sales department, the same to the marketing department, and the same to the finance department. So here, I can use the Maxifs. Because we said the Maxifs or the Maxif can do the work, but I like using the ifs because the ifs can handle 1 or more. So whether I have 1, I can use ifs. Whether I have more, I can use ifs. So we start with the maximum range where it is the salary column, comma, the criteria range 1, where we got the department column, comma, and the criteria 1, which is the sales department. So absolute reference all the cells, that absolute reference all the cells, absolute reference all the cells, absolute reference all the cells, the same to that. And I can put this down. So it is now clear that the highest paid person in the sales department is earning 141,200. In marketing, the paid person is getting 79,600. In procurement, the person is getting 142, and the highest paid person in finance is 145,000. We can still get the minimum salary across all these departments. These we can use the Minifs. So when you use the Minifs, these are the arguments. 1 is the mean range. So that is our range, comma. Next is the criteria range 1. So the criteria range 1 is going to be the departments, comma, and then criteria 1, which is the sales department here. You have to pull this formula down, absolute reference, or the ranges. So that is okay. So you can see the lowest paid person in the sales department is earning 25,709. In marketing, 25,600. In procurement, 23,500, and finance, 24,700. Now this, how do you count the number of employees per department? To do that, we'll be counting based on a criteria. To do that, we can use the count ifs. So if you use the count ifs, these are the arguments. The first thing is the criteria range, and then the criteria. So we are counting departments, comma, then criteria, sales. So how many people are in sales department? Let me adjust the range so that I can pull this formula down. That is okay. So you can be able to see that the sales department has got the highest number of employees. We got around 12 people. For sales, that is followed by procurement with 11, together with finance, and the lowest staffed department is marketing. It has only 8 people. In this scenario here, we are told for the combination of a department and position, calculate the following. One, we have a combination of department, which is finance, and position, which is accountant. So we want to see what is the total salary of an accountant who is working in the Department of Finance. What is the average salary for that accountant who is working in the Department of Finance? What about the minimum salary for that accountant who is working in the Department of Finance? Here we have two criteria, department and position. So to do that, let me do away with this. So it is going to be equal sign. Remember, we are talking about the total salary. So we are going to use the Sumifs. When you use the Sumifs, what is the first argument? It is the sum range. That is okay. We said if it's the average range, the sum range, the max range, it should be the numerical column. You got to understand that. Next, we have criteria range 1. Criteria range 1. So criteria range 1 is going to be the departments, comma, and then criteria 1, which is the department in this case. The department here is finance. So I'm going to just reference this cell here. Then we got criteria range 2, which in this case is going to be the position. And then after that, we go to criteria 2, which in this case is going to be the position, which is going to be accountant. You can absolutely reference this, but for now I don't see any importance because we're not going to scroll this down. But just because this is something that we'll be doing, let us just do it. All the ranges should be absolutely referenced. Here we got 3 ranges. Okay, this is the total amount of salary that is earned by a person who is an accountant and working in the finance department. So if you have to get the average salary, the only difference is that we are going to use the Averageifs instead of Sumifs. If you have to get the maximum salary, the difference is going to be that we use the Maxifs instead of Sumifs. So why do I pull this down? And after pulling this down, I change this instead of regular shift here. No, there's a problem here. There's a problem here. When I pull this down, remember I've not absolutely referenced the finance of the department. So if I absolutely reference everything, I don't want anything to move. Then I get this, I pull this down. And now the formula is just exactly like the one above, but I want to change, instead of using Sumifs, I use Averageifs because the arguments are the same. Averageifs. So the arguments are the same. Average range, range 1, criteria 1, range 2, criteria 2.